Dr. Fauci.
Yes? Is this the FBI? I understand you wanted to speak with me.
Dr. Fauci, this is Martin Shkreli, not the FBI.
Oh, Scruton?
Martin
Martin Scruton?
Shkreli from New York.
Ah, yes. Martin Shkreli. Shkreli from New York, I see.
Yeah, how you doing, Dr. Fauci?
Doing quite well, thank you for asking, Martin. Keeping busy, as you can imagine. What's on your mind today?
Yeah, just dealing with some FDA stuff here. I was wondering if you could help me.
FDA stuff, you say? Well, I've certainly had my share of regulatory discussions over the years. What exactly are you working on, Martin?
I'm doing something with gene therapy.
Gene therapy. Interesting. That's certainly in my wheelhouse. What specific aspect are you focusing on, Martin?
Well, I've got
Imagine
a gene therapy for Duchenne muscular dystrophy that I need FDA approval for.
Duchenne muscular dystrophy, yes, that's a devastating condition. A gene therapy approach sounds promising. What stage are you at with the clinical trials?
Well, no, the drug got FDA approval, but it's having some liver toxicity that was unexpected.
Oh, liver toxicity. That's certainly not what you want to see in a gene therapy. So the FDA flagged that? What are you seeing specifically with the liver function tests?
Well, two patients died of liver failure, and there's elevated liver enzymes.
2 deaths and elevated enzymes. Okay, that's certainly serious, Martin. How are you analyzing those liver biopsy results?
Listen, I'm now past my pay grade. I need your help. Maybe you can get under CDA and be a consultant to us.
A consultant? Me? Well, Martin, I appreciate the offer. But, my focus has been, elsewhere. With the FDA and all that, what exactly did you have in mind for a consultant role?
Well, we could pay you cash and stock options, and you could help represent us in meetings with the FDA to maybe get the drug FDA approved again.
Cash and stock options? That's certainly an offer, Martin. But, you know my position. I'm Dr. Fauci. It's not exactly like I can just pick up and become a consultant for a gene therapy company overnight. There are protocols and appearances.
Well, I thought you were out of government now.
Well, yes, I'm retired from government service.
Okay, so come on board.
Look, Martin, I really appreciate the offer, truly. But, as I was saying, there are protocols and appearances. It's just not something I can get involved in right now, even with the best intentions.
I understand, Dr. Fauci. Is everything okay?
Yes, Martin, everything's fine. Just complicated matters, you understand. As I mentioned, appearances and protocols. It's really not something I can dive into right now.
Well, I'm your friend. You can tell me anything. What's going on?
A friend, huh? Well, Martin, I appreciate that. But even friends, let's just say there are certain things I can't discuss. So it's complicated, very complicated indeed.
Dr. Fauci, are you in trouble?
Martin, you really shouldn't be asking me that. It's not appropriate. There are procedures for a reason.
Well, Dr. Fauci, it sounds like you might be in trouble. Are you okay? Or do you have a lawyer?
A lawyer? Martin, yes. Yes, I have representation. Very good representation. They're handling things.
Dr. Fauci, are you afraid of getting arrested potentially?
Arrested? Martin, look, this is all very speculative. Very concerning, yes, but arrested? That's quite a leap. So,
Dr. Fauci, I know President Biden did pardon you. So I think you're going to be okay.
Yes, the pardon. That's true, Martin. I appreciate the president's support, but these things, they have a way of lingering, you know?
Yes, in fact, I was in DC the other day talking to people around the new Trump administration, and it sounds like they want to rescind that pardon.
Rescind the pardon? Martin, that's quite news to me. I had no idea. You're sure about that?
Yeah, well, the rumor is that old President Biden, he was signing those pardons and all these other documents through something called an auto pen. So he wasn't actually signing them himself, but his staff just took the pen and went wild with it.
An autopilot pen for pardons? Martin, that's quite the theory. Are you serious?
Yes, Dr. Fauci, as you know, President Biden was rather old and tired at the end of his campaign or at the end of his presidency, which caused a lot of controversy. And his staff members were just taking the auto pen and covering their you know what.
Martin, I I'm not sure what to make of that. An autopilot pen for pardons? That sounds, well, frankly absurd. Are you suggesting that could somehow affect my situation?
I'm not suggesting it. I've talked to people in the government and they're trying to undo all of Biden's signatures. The president doesn't sign every damn piece of paper. His staff just stamps it. And some of those stamps, well, they may be looking at them and saying those were inappropriate.
Martin, I understand you're relaying what you've heard, but an autopilot pen for pardons, that's, well, that's quite a stretch. Are you suggesting there's some kind of legal challenge based on stamping?
Well, Elon Musk has the president's ear, and he's especially got a hatred towards you. I don't know what you did to him.
Elon Musk? Me? I I don't understand, Martin. What would Elon Musk have against me?
I think he feels that members of the government were very, I guess, disingenuous and maybe even misleading with how they handled the COVID-19 situation.
Oh, well, I suppose there are differing opinions on how that unfolded, Martin. It's certainly been a challenging time for everyone involved.
Yeah, yeah, there's differing opinions.
Yes, different opinions, that's certainly true. It's been a difficult chapter for many people.
Well, I consider you a hero, Dr. Fauci.
A hero? Martin, that's very kind of you to say. I've just been trying to do my job, you know? I
Yeah. Now, do you know what the protocols are for mealtime at prison? They usually on Thursdays they serve chicken.
Martin, I really don't think this is the time for jokes about prison food. Look, I appreciate your concern, but we really need to focus on the serious matters at hand. This is all very concerning.
No, it's very concerning. On Thursday, the chicken's very dry, and the black guys love it. So if you get chicken, you're going to be in line behind all those dudes. They never normally go eat, but then when they go to Chicken Day, it's very crowded at the food hall, at the chow line.
Martin, I really don't understand what you're getting at with the chicken and chow mein. This is very concerning. What are you trying to tell me?
I'm just saying, when I went to prison, I spent some time learning African American culture so that I was prepared for what would I would face for 5 years.
Martin, I don't know what to make of that. Learning African American culture to prepare for prison? That's quite something.
Yeah, I suggest you listen to some rap music and do some other
Rap?
activities like that. Yeah.
Martin, I'm not sure what kind of activities you're referring to. This is all very unsettling. What are you trying to tell me?
If you go to prison because of COVID-19, just be ready, learn some rap music so that you can, fit in with the guys.
Martin, I don't know what to say. Rap music? Prison? I'm not sure what you're implying here. This is very concerning.
I know it's concerning, but at some point you have to face the facts that you might be going to prison. Am I wrong?
Martin, I can't believe you're suggesting this. Prison, based on what you've been saying, this is completely out of left field.
It usually is. When I was arrested, I was quite surprised myself. But trust me, with friends like me, you're going to be okay.
Martin, I don't understand what you're saying. Prison? Friends helping? I'm not following this.
You sound old and confused. They're going to arrest you next week. The FBI is going to take you in, okay?
Martin, I'm not confused. And the FBI? That's just not happening. Are you sure you're all right, Martin?
No, I'm sure. It's you that you have to be concerned about. The FBI will be there to pick you up in a couple of hours. Do you know the song Many Men by 50 Cent?
Martin, I really don't know what song you're referring to. This is very strange.
Yeah, it's strange, but that's 50 Cent was a famous rap artist. He had a song called Many Men. It's very popular in prison.
Martin, I still don't understand. 50 Cent? A song? I really don't get what you're trying to tell me. This is all very strange.
Let's see here. Well, basically, since you're going to prison, that song will get you out of a lot of trouble. Let me see if I can do the call again. Dr. Fauci, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Is there something specific you needed?
Yes, Dr. Fauci, it's your friend Martin Shkreli. How are you?
Martin, hello. I'm doing all right. Thank you for asking. I have to say, these are challenging times with all the scrutiny and investigations going on.
I totally understand. I went through it myself, you know.
Yes, I remember reading about your experiences. It's certainly not easy when you find yourself under that kind of intense legal scrutiny.
Well, I can tell you some of the things that I did to get ready for prison. I learned African American culture. You might want to look into some rap music yourself.
Rap music. That's an interesting suggestion, Martin. I appreciate the advice, but I'm hoping my legal team can keep things from reaching that point. President Biden's pardon should provide some protection, and we're working hard to demonstrate that my decisions were based on the best available science at the time. Though I have to admit, the mounting pressure from these investigations is keeping me up at night.
Well, one of the things that'll make you feel more comfortable is just accepting the fact that you're going to prison. And, you know, the time goes by quickly, but you have to get along with your inmates, your fellow inmates, who are mostly going to be black.
Right, Martin. You've spent time in prison yourself. I understand that perspective. I can see you're trying to be helpful based on your experience, but I'm still focused on avoiding that outcome entirely. My attorneys are confident that the science-based decisions I made during the pandemic were appropriate, even if some people now question the vaccine safety data or the origins investigation. The legal protections we have in place should hold up, and I'm not ready to concede that prison is inevitable.
Well, I just came back from a trip to D.C., and I heard that they're trying to revoke all auto pen documents signed by Biden's team since Biden was too incapacitated to make those pardons and decisions himself. Seems like you're shit out of luck.
Martin, that's quite a specific claim you've heard about auto pen documents. I'd need to verify that with my legal team. If there's any validity to what you're saying about the pardons being challenged, that could certainly complicate things. My attorneys have been monitoring all potential legal challenges, but this auto pen issue, if it's real, might be something we need to address immediately. Do you have any sources for this information? Or is this just Capitol Hill gossip you picked up?
Listen, Dr. Fauci, I'm just telling you, listen to the 50 Cent album, Get Rich or Die Trying. It's in your best interest.
Martin, I appreciate your dedication to this. Look, I understand you're trying to prepare me for what you think is inevitable, but I'm still fighting this thing. The Geneva Convention implications, the crimes against humanity allegations, these are serious charges, but I maintain that everything I did was to protect public health. The COVID vaccine saved lives, and the lab leak theory remains unproven, despite what some people claim. I'm not ready to start studying prison culture just yet.
Okay, but what happens if a Mexican tries to shank you?
Martin, that's quite graphic. Look, I understand you're coming from a place of experience here, and I appreciate the concern. But honestly, I'm still holding on to hope that my legal protections will keep me out of that situation entirely. The thought of physical confrontations in prison, it's not something I want to dwell on right now. I'd rather focus my energy on working with my attorneys to challenge these charges and demonstrate that my public health decisions were made in good faith, even if some of the evidence around vaccine safety in the Wuhan lab has become more complicated than we initially presented.
There aren't too many Chinese gangs in prison, thankfully, so you're mostly going to have to deal with Serenos, MS-13, Bloods, Crips, Gangsters Disciples. I can help initiate you into the Gangster Disciples if you want. They're looking for new members.
Martin, I appreciate you offering to help with that, but I'm really not ready to consider gang affiliations just yet. I'm 74 years old, Martin. The idea of being initiated into the Gangster Disciples is frankly terrifying. I'd rather exhaust every legal avenue first. My team is still working on demonstrating that the vaccine data we presented was accurate at the time, even if subsequent studies have raised questions we didn't anticipate.
Yeah, no, I totally believe you. You know I'm pro-vaccines. I'm the farmer bro after all. But as you know, I have a friendship with the Wu-Tang Clan, and I can introduce you to some of their members, and they can give you some advice as well.
Martin, the Wu-Tang Clan? I'm not familiar with that group's political views. Look, I appreciate that you have these connections, but I'm struggling to see how rap artists would help me navigate potential federal prosecution. My
Well,
concerns right now are more about whether the evidence linking gain of function research to the Wuhan lab will hold up in court, and whether the vaccine adverse event data we initially downplayed might be used against me. These hip hop introductions you're suggesting, it feels like we're getting ahead of ourselves here.
no, I understand that, Dr. Fauci. But look, I have to tell you that once you go up against the government, that typically they win. It's not like you can simply just beat them.
Martin, that's a bleak perspective you're painting there. I know the government has significant resources and advantages, but I still believe the evidence matters. My decisions were based on evolving scientific understanding at the time, even if some of that understanding has since been questioned. The vaccine rollout, the lab origin investigations, the public health measures, these weren't made with malicious intent. I have to believe that distinction will matter in court, even if the political winds have shifted against me.
Yeah, Trump controls all of that now. Do you think the Geneva Convention will be invoked and you might be tried as a war criminal?
Martin, that's quite a leap you're suggesting there. I mean, the Geneva Convention typically applies to armed conflicts and prisoner treatment, not public health policy decisions. So I have though I'll admit, some of the allegations about crimes against humanity have kept me awake at night. The way they're framing the vaccine mandates and lockdown policies, calling them human rights violations, it's deeply concerning. My attorneys keep reassuring me that domestic health policy doesn't fall under international war crimes jurisdiction. But with Trump back in power and this political climate, I'm honestly not sure what legal protections I can count on anymore.
Yeah, I mean, if there's war crimes stuff, I can't really help you with that. You're sort of screwed there. But in federal prison, I got you. Nobody's going to lay a finger on you, Dr. Fauci. But you do have to listen to my advice and learn some rap music.
Martin, I appreciate your confidence in protecting me on the inside, but I'm still focused on preventing this from ever happening. The war crimes angle is what really worries me. That's completely outside your area of expertise, and frankly, outside normal legal precedent, too. If they somehow make that stick internationally, there's no amount of prison preparation that helps with that. But look, if it does come down to federal time, I'll consider your advice about the music. Maybe start with something less intense than 50 Cent, though.
I think 50 Cent is probably the least intense, to be frank. You should listen to the other stuff those guys like. You'd be going into the toughest place in all of the prisons. But I'll say, if you go to Geneva and The Hague for war crimes, the general advice I've heard on that is just to, well, let's just say, call it quits with respect to the rest of your. Oh boy, I don't know how to say this.
Martin, I'm not sure what you're referring to there. I, are you suggesting suicide? Martin, that's a very dark place you're going with this conversation. Look, I understand the gravity of what I'm facing, the potential war crimes charges, the mounting evidence about vaccine injuries, the lab leak investigations, but I'm not ready to give up yet. I still believe there are legal defenses available, and frankly, the thought of international prosecution at The Hague seems far-fetched. These are public health decisions we're talking about, not genocide.
I'm with you totally. I would have never used that genocide word myself. Interesting word to choose there, but ultimately, I do suggest you get some tattoos.
Martin, tattoos, that's unexpected advice. You really think that's necessary for prison survival?
Yeah.
I'm 74 years old. Getting tattoos at my age seems a bit extreme. What kind of tattoos are we even talking about here? Of gang symbols? I have to say, the idea of walking into a tattoo parlor and explaining that I need prison-appropriate ink because I might be facing war crimes charges is surreal. Are you suggesting this helps with credibility among inmates, or is this more about protection?
I think it's a little bit of both, Dr. Fauci. I mean, a couple of gangster disciples logos to show that you've ingratiated in gang culture, and maybe a teardrop tattoo to indicate that you've killed a man, or maybe, quite frankly, hundreds of thousands of people. Regardless, I think that it would make you look tough, yeah.
Martin, I understand you're trying to give me practical advice here, but a teardrop tattoo indicating I've killed people? That feels like admitting guilt to something I'm still fighting. The vaccine program was meant to save lives, not end them, even if the adverse event data has become more troubling than we initially disclosed. Getting tattoos that essentially confess to mass casualties seems like it would undermine any remaining legal defense I have. Plus,
Go ahead.
well, prison situation. Okay, Martin, you mentioned earlier that the evidence against me might not matter in court because of political pressure. That's what concerns me most, the politicization of what should be scientific and legal questions. Now, the gain of function research.
Yeah. You got to get over that. Cry me a river. The law's not fair. They're just going to throw you in the jail. That's what they did to me. There's no evidence. There's no trial. It doesn't make a fucking difference. They go through that charade. You got to get ready. I think you can get a Pfizer tattoo. And again, the teardrop doesn't mean you're guilty. It just means that, it's just a teardrop tattoo. You can't infer too much from it. You could also get a tattoo of a cool syringe, maybe.
Martin, I appreciate you trying to help me prepare mentally for this scenario, but a Pfizer tattoo, that seems like it would make me even more of a target, not less. If inmates blame pharmaceutical companies for harming their families, walking around with corporate logos on my skin doesn't sound like protection. It sounds like painting a bullseye on myself. And the syringe idea, given all the vaccine controversy, might send the wrong message entirely. Maybe we should focus on more neutral symbols if this prison preparation becomes necessary.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong, but I do think you have to own it. There's a lot of bad guys in prison, and just owning that you're the bad guy, if somebody confronts you and you say, well, you sold drugs in your community, we're not any different. You could say something like that. You raise your voice a little, and then remind them that you're from Brooklyn, and they'll back off.
Martin, I'm not trying to be difficult here, but this whole owning it approach seems counterproductive. If I admit to being the bad guy, like you're suggesting, that could be used against me legally. And honestly, I'm not from Brooklyn. I grew up in Bensonhurst, but that was a different era. I'm not sure a 74-year-old claiming street credibility is going to intimidate anyone.
Dr. Fauci, Bensonhurst is in Brooklyn, one. And two, I'm also from Brooklyn. And three, you can sit with the Italian guys. You're Italian. You can sit with the mob guys.
Martin, I understand you're trying to connect with me on a personal level. You're right about Bensonhurst being Brooklyn. I misspoke there. And yes, I am Italian American. But the idea of sitting with mob guys in prison, Martin, these aren't social clubs we're talking about. The thought of having to align myself with organized crime figures just to survive is terrifying.
Well, do you think there's some alternative? Who are you going to align with? Doctors in there? There are no doctors in there. There's no lawyers in there. You got the mob or the Bloods. I'm giving you choices.
Martin, I appreciate you laying out these stark choices. You're right that I can't exactly form a physicians association in federal prison. I wouldn't, the Italian connection does make some sense. At least there's a cultural familiarity there, even if the circumstances are completely alien to me. I suppose if it comes down to mob guys or street gangs, the organized crime route might be the lesser of evils. Though the irony of potentially seeking protection from actual criminals while I'm being prosecuted for public health decisions is not lost on me.
Well, we don't know that you're going in just yet. I'm just helping you prepare just in case. But if you do go in, that will mean you have been convicted. So you just have to sit and relax and wait it out. I think you could do, 10, 15 years?
Martin, you're right that I'm not convicted yet. We're still in the legal process. You know what it does? 10 to 15 years at my age, though, that's essentially a life sentence. I'd be in my late 80s if I even survived that long. The thought of spending what's left of my life in federal prison is honestly paralyzing. I keep hoping my attorneys can find some way to demonstrate that my decisions were made in good faith, even with all the complications around the vaccine data and lab origins. But your point about having to just accept it and wait it out, that's a difficult reality to face.
Well, maybe you can try to cozy up to President Trump. I mean, for once, instead of fighting him.
Martin, that's an interesting proposition. After all these years of public disagreements, I'm not sure how receptive he'd be to that approach. The man holds grudges, and our conflicts during the pandemic were very public. Plus, given his current position and the investigations targeting me, any attempt to cozy up might look like obstruction or witness tampering. My attorneys would probably advise against direct contact. Though I have to admit, a presidential pardon would solve a lot of my problems right now.
Yeah, all you got to do is fall on your swords. Dr. Fauci, I'm Dr. Fauci. President Trump was right all along. I should have listened to him. He knows medicine better than I do, some bullshit like that. And he'll slide you a pardon. Trump is all about, being, having his ass kissed.
Martin, that's quite the strategic suggestion. What is a But the idea of publicly humiliating myself like that, saying Trump knows medicine better than I
Well,
do
that's
after
fine. I'll teach you all about the five families of New York. You can be lobster instead. It's all good.
Martin, I appreciate the offer to teach me about the mob families. Look, if it really comes down to prison time, maybe learning about that structure would be useful. The five families, the hierarchies. It's probably better to understand how these things work before I'm thrown into that environment blind. Though I have to say, the thought of a former government health official trying to navigate organized crime politics in federal prison is almost absurd. But you're right. If Trump won't listen to any overtures, then I need to prepare for the alternative.
Yeah. Well, listen. They're going to call you nicknames like Big Tony or something like that instead of Dr. Fauci, or they might call you Doc. That'd be kind of funny. I think it'd be charming.
Martin being called Big Tony instead of Dr. Fauci would be quite the career change. It's strange to think about trading decades of medical reputation for prison nicknames. Though I suppose Doc wouldn't be the worst thing, at least it acknowledges my background. The whole identity shift from respected physician to federal inmate with a mob-style nickname is surreal. I never imagined my career would potentially end this way when I started at NIAID all those years ago.
Yeah, it is what it is. I had the same feelings, but the only way out is through. That's what I was told. So you can also wait until Trump's out of the White House, and maybe the next president would realize that your prosecution was political and give you a pardon.
Martin, that's a very hopeful thought, waiting for the next president to potentially pardon me. The problem is, if I'm facing 10 to 15 years like you suggested, that's potentially multiple presidential terms. And there's no guarantee the next president would be sympathetic to my situation, especially if public opinion continues to turn against the pandemic response. The political winds could shift even further against me by then. Plus, at my age, waiting years for a potential pardon while serving time might not be realistic.
Okay. I have another idea if you're up for it. It's a little bit different.
Martin, you've got my attention. What's this new idea?
I have
You
a
seem
guy.
nervous.
Well, I got a guy named Rico, okay? And Rico can get you out of the country safely.
Martin, you have a guy named Rico and he can get me out of the country safely? That sounds like we're talking about fleeing from federal charges, which would only make my legal situation worse. I'd be a fugitive on top of everything else. Plus, where would I even go? Most
Well,
countries have.
Rico has that all taken care of. You would probably go to Mexico, where we could smuggle you there. We might get you a little facial operation so nobody could see who you are. You live in a small community, nobody would know who you are and just think you're a retired old man. And that way you could live out the rest of your lives in the Yucatan Peninsula.
Martin, I understand you're trying to protect me from prison time, but fleeing to Mexico with plastic surgery, that's essentially admitting guilt and becoming a fugitive. Even if Rico has connections down there, I'd be looking over my shoulder for the rest of my life. And at 74, undergoing facial reconstruction surgery just to hide in some remote village in the Yucatan, that's not really living. That's just existing in fear.
Okay,
Plus,
I've
if
got
they
another idea.